We're learning more details after President Trump was accused by his former attorney, Michael Cohen, of having full knowledge about a controversial 2016 meeting in Trump Tower. Cohen contends that then-candidate Trump knew in advance about a planned discussion between his son, Donald Trump Jr., and Russians for dirt that would undermine Hillary Clinton. The allegation came days after Cohen's lawyer, Lanny Davis, released a tape recording of Cohen and Trump discussing a payment to a former Playboy model. The president responded Friday on Twitter, saying in part, quote, "I did not know of the meeting with my son Don Jr. Sounds to me like someone is trying to make up stories to get himself out of an unrelated jam." The Michael Cohen controversy was also front and center on the Sunday morning shows. Here's some of what you may have missed.
Who do you believe?
It's a good question. I mean, listen, it's not clear to me Michael leaked that, and so I'm gonna stay on the side of the president here. I'm going to take the president at his word that he didn't know.
It is a big issue for us. It's a big issue for the president and for the presidency. But we should make sure that we stay on focus, that the Russians are clearly our threat here.
Joining me now is Washington Post White House correspondent Ann Gearan. Ann, welcome.
Happy to be here.
CBS News has confirmed the president's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, is now willing to work with special counsel Robert Mueller. What kind of political problems could this cause for the administration?
Well, it actually could cause quite a number of problems for President Trump directly and sort of wider political problems for his administration more generally. Directly, there is no one who we know about publicly who would be potentially in Mueller's camp. I mean, someone who Mueller would have access to their information, a cooperating witness. There's no one other than Cohen who would appear to have as much potentially damaging information about not only President Trump, but his son and some of his close aides, if, as the Mueller investigation is trying to find out, that Trump Tower meeting was something that was widely known within the campaign or whether it was directly known ahead of time by President Trump. President Trump denies that he knew about the meeting ahead of time, but if there's somebody who has some particular piece of evidence, perhaps recorded evidence, perhaps written, perhaps merely the memory of an oral conversation, it may well be Michael Cohen.
Well, and on that point, Ann, what kind of impact could this have on the Mueller probe? And does Cohen even make a credible witness at this point?
Well, I would fully expect the president's current attorneys and his political allies to make exactly the argument you're alluding to there, which is that Michael Cohen is not a credible witness. In fact, we heard Rudy Giuliani, the president's current personal attorney, interviewed on Face the Nation this morning, making a version of that argument. Giuliani, had been quoted just a matter of weeks ago as saying that he believed that Michael Cohen was honorable, and today saying that he's a habitual liar. That is an argument surely that they will take forward. As to really how valuable he might be to Mueller, if he is in fact now providing information to Mueller, it's one of the first places we know of where sort of directly personal and business information related to Donald Trump as in the period when he was a candidate and even before might come into Mueller's possession.
And all this comes as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo appeared before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Wednesday to answer questions about Russia. You reported on this. Were lawmakers satisfied with Pompeo's answers about President Trump's transparency when it comes to Vladimir Putin?
Not at all, Elaine. In fact, a couple of Democratic senators afterward said that they are not at all satisfied that Secretary of State Pompeo even knows himself what happened during that approximately 2-hour private meeting between President Trump and President Putin in Helsinki. And more generally, you heard Republicans, chiefly from the Senate panel chairman Bob Corker, who is not seeking re-election, but in milder form from other Republicans, challenging Pompeo on the overall strategy involving Russia and asking whether President Trump is really seeking to help Putin, or at least stand aside as Putin does some things that both Republican and Democratic senators were saying are not in U.S. interests, undermining NATO, for example, potential cooperation or lack of challenging Putin over Ukraine, and certainly election meddling. It's notable that just before the hearing began, the White House took that opportunity to put out a statement clarifying that President Trump will not recognize Russian annexation of Crimea, despite the president's comments earlier this spring that suggested that that was something that he might at least consider. So I think they were trying to blunt the possibility that Republican senators would go after Pompeo over Ukraine and over the U.S. sanctions that were applied to Russia about the 2014 Ukraine annexation. Those are sanctions that were passed with Republican support and are dear to many Republican hearts, and they do not want to see the president undermine them.
Meantime, we know the president has a domestic agenda. On Sunday, the president tweeted that he would, in part, quote, be willing to shut down the government if the Democrats do not give us votes on border security, which includes the wall. And is he really willing to go this far? And what would be the fallout if he did?
Well, we've all learned to never say never with President Trump, right? That way lies danger. But I will point out that this is a threat that he's made 3 or more times before and not carried out. He clearly sees the government shutdown as a leverage point. It's a leverage point that has been effective in getting negotiations with Congress before, and that's most likely what he's doing here. But it's worth pointing out that Senator McConnell and Speaker Ryan really made a specific point earlier this week of trying to head off this possibility by speaking with the president and trying to negotiate something that would, allow the president to have a sense of forward momentum on the larger immigration issues, while not having to threaten a government shutdown in order to get a specific piece of legislation through before the midterms.
Well, finally, Sunday marks 100 days until the midterms. A new CBS News poll gives the president what some would regard as relatively strong marks for handling the economy. We've seen reporting that some Republicans are worried about a possible blue wave. Do you think they can take some comfort with how President Trump is currently polling?
Certainly they can take some comfort there. And the economic numbers are really good. And that is something that President Trump clearly is relishing and feels that he's owed credit for and should take it. And it's true that, presidents get blamed when there are bad economic numbers. So it seems, turnabout is fair play, certainly in his mind, to be able to take credit for numbers that may or may not have a lot that of direct relation to some of his policies. All that said, the positive numbers and the likelihood of some at least short-term continued positive economic momentum is dear to congressional Republicans' heart. It helps. It helps every Republican, but certainly Republicans in potentially endangered seats make the argument that they had hoped to be able to make about this president from the beginning, which is watch the results, watch the bottom line. He's passed the tax cuts he promised. He has made immigration an issue exactly the way he promised. He's done a number of other things. He's certainly on trade. That is a fraud issue for many Republicans, but in the larger sense, it allows Republicans to say that he keeps his promises. He's challenging other countries on trade deals. And you think what you will about the tweets, look at what he's done and look at what he's going to continue to do. Look at the Supreme Court, for example. We need Republicans in Congress. That is an argument that they had hoped to be able to make and that he wouldn't undermine them in doing. And they now go into the midterms, at least from this vantage, 3 months out, with enhanced ability to do that.
No doubt we'll be hearing the president and Republicans touting all of that and more in the weeks ahead. Ann Guerin, thanks very much, Ann.
Thank you.